Hello everyone and welcome to Beginner's Code, a place for you to learn with me as I dive deeper into the coding world. Before I start, this video is brought to you by SiteGround. If you're looking for a hosting service that is fast, reliable and has great customer service, please do check out the link in the description below. This is an affiliate link, so if you do end up being a SiteGround customer through my link, I will receive a little and this will be extremely beneficial for the channel. Or if you're wanting to learn more about Python, then make sure you check out my website, Instagram or GitHub for projects. The links for these will all be in the descriptions below, so please do check them out. Also, don't forget to subscribe to see more videos from me as I teach you through the basics. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is just create a while loop, and we will assign a true boolean to it so that it will constantly run. Now we will create a variable called start, and we will create user input, and we will just ask them, would you like to use the converter? Type quits to end. So this will prompt the user to enter an input, and if they type in the string quit, then we will do something. So we are actually assigning it to start. So now we can use an if statement, and we can say if start, so if whatever the user has entered is double equal to the string of quit, then we will break. So here, if the user has entered exactly this string of quit, then we will break out of the while loop. And then else, we will do some logic. So here we were actually going to hold the program that we are using for the converter. So we'll create a variable called convert, and this will also use user input. So which conversion would you like? And then we'll create a new line, and we will add the first, which is Celsius, and the second, we'll then create a new line and add the second, which is Fahrenheit, and we will add a new line there. So now if convert is double equal to 1, so if the user has entered 1, actually we need to wrap this in an integer, so that if they do enter the number 1, then we can actually use this mathematical operator. Otherwise we would have to wrap this like that. But for now we are using the integer call around it just to change it from a string to an integer. So now we will create a Celsius variable, and this will be assigned user input, but we want to make sure that we can actually use numbers that are of more than that hold a decimal place. So for example 24.2 or 75.2. So we will now ask the user to enter the temperature they'd like to convert. So what temperature would you like to convert? And then we will create a Fahrenheit variable, which will be assigned the mathematical operator to turn or to convert Celsius to Fahrenheit. So in brackets, we're going to use the Celsius variable, which is the temperature they have just entered. And then we will times this by, in brackets, 9 divided by 5. And then outside of all of the brackets, we will add 32. Now we will use the Fahrenheit variable and just assign it to the round function, which will also take in the original Fahrenheit variable and then the integer 2. So this will just round whatever they've entered to 2 decimal places if it is decimal place numbers. Now we will use f strings to print the Celsius amount, and then converted to Fahrenheit is, and then we will pass in the Fahrenheit variable, and we'll just say degrees at the end. Now we'll use the else if to see if they actually chose the number 2, which is to convert from Fahrenheit. So here we will create a Fahrenheit variable, and this will also ask the user to enter a temperature. So what temperature would you like to convert? And now we will use the mathematical equation to turn Fahrenheit to Celsius. So we'll create a Celsius variable, and this will hold the equation of Fahrenheit minus 32 times by, in brackets, 5 divided by 9. And then we will do the same above, where we create or reassign the Celsius variable to the round function. So we will pass in round with Celsius and to 2 decimal places. And then we will use f strings again to print the output. So we will pass in here Fahrenheit, and then F converted to Celsius is Celsius degrees. And then else we will print, please enter a valid input. So if the user enters the number 3, 4, 5, 6, 0, any number, then it will print this. Otherwise, it will use it. If they enter 1, it will use this, or if they enter 2, it will use this. So now if I save this, head over to my terminal, cd into my desktop, Python 3 temperature converter. Would you like to use the converter? Yes. Which conversion would you like? We'll go with Celsius. What temperature would you like to convert? We'll go with 24 degrees. So 24 degrees Celsius converted to Fahrenheit is 75.2 degrees. Yes, I will do it again. So just to make sure the equations are correct, we will use Fahrenheit, and then we will convert 75.2 degrees. So 75.2 degrees Fahrenheit converted to Celsius is 24 degrees. Now, just to make sure the else statement works, if we enter yes, and then I enter the number 7, please enter a valid input. Now, if I type in quit, it should end the program, which it has. Okay, so now we're going to be using functions to create the same program. So what we'll do first is we will define the Celsius to Fahrenheit function. So def cell to far, and this will take one parameter, which will be Celsius. Now we will create the Fahrenheit variable inside of the function, and this will hold the mathematics that will take the Celsius that's been passed in on the function call, and it will be outputted to the Fahrenheit variable. So Celsius times by, and then in brackets 9 divided by 5, and then we will add 32 to the end. And then we will just use the Fahrenheit variable to reassign, and we will reassign it to the round function, which will take in Fahrenheit and the integer 2, so that will just round it to 2 decimal places. Now we are going to use the return keyword and create an f string, and we will pass in the Celsius variable, and then converted to Fahrenheit is, and then we will use the Fahrenheit variable, and we will just put degrees at the end. Now we will define the Fahrenheit to Celsius, so def far to cell, and this will take in a Fahrenheit variable. Now we'll do the same as above, but we'll create the Celsius variable, and this will use the mathematics of Fahrenheit minus 32 times by, and then in brackets 5 divided by 9. And then we will just reassign the Celsius variable to the round function of Celsius and the integer 2. And then we will return, using an f string, Fahrenheit converted to Celsius is Celsius degrees. Now we will create a conversion function that will hold the logic to actually determine what conversion the user wants to do. So to start with, we will define the conversion, or define the function and call it conversion, and we will create a variable called convert, which will hold an integer that a user needs to input. So we will say, which conversion would you like to use? and then we'll create a new line, and the first will be Celsius, and then we'll create a new line, and the second will be Fahrenheit. And then if convert is double equal to 1, we will do Celsius is equal to float of user input, saying please enter a temperature. And then we will print, and within this print statement we will call this function that we've created up here. So cell to var, and we will pass in the Celsius parameter, or the Celsius variable here, as a parameter. And then else if convert is double equal to 2, we will create a Fahrenheit variable, and this will be assigned to user input, and we are using the float function again to turn the user input into a float. So this will allow a user to enter 24.3 or 27.2. So please enter a temperature. And then we will again use the function call within this print statement. So var to cell, and then as a parameter we will pass in the Fahrenheit variable we've just created here. And then else we will just print please enter a valid input. Would help if I spell input right. Okay, so now we will create a retry variable. So this will just ask the user if they want to use the converter again. So def retry will create a redo variable, which will be assigned to user input of are you ready to use the converter? Type quit to end. And then if redo is double equal to the string of quit, then we will return false. And then else we will return true. So if the user has entered the string of quit, then we will return false. If they enter anything else, then we will return true. So now we can assign this retry variable, or this retry function, to a variable. So what I'm going to do is create a start variable, and then assign it to the function call, assign it to the function call of retry. And then while start, so while this function call is returning true, then this while loop will start. So now we can create a convert variable, and this will just be assigned to this conversion function here. And then we can just reassign start to retry. So where we are actually using this conversion call here, we are going to be calling the other methods or the other functions above. So within the while loop, we actually only need to call one conversion, or one function call, because the others are called within that one function. So if I save this and then clear this, cd into my desktop, and then Python 3 temp converter 2, yes. So if we convert from Celsius first, and if I enter 30 degrees, so 30 degrees Celsius converted to Fahrenheit is 86 degrees. So just to make sure we have the maths right, if I convert from Fahrenheit backwards and I do 86 degrees, then we get 86 converted to Celsius is 30. Now if I enter quit, this should end the program, which it does. Okay, so the final way is using object-oriented programming. So what we'll do first is we will create a class called temperature, and we will create a constructor method. So def underscore init underscore. So this will just initialize the object. So this will take in a couple of parameters, the first being self, the second being Celsius, and finally the third being Fahrenheit. And then we will just do self.celsius is equal to Celsius. I've spelled that wrong. I think I have actually spelled Celsius wrong as well. I think it's actually Celsius, but for now that's okay. Self.Fahrenheit is equal to Fahrenheit. And now we will create the methods that will use the conversions. So def cell to far, and this will take in self and Celsius. So these will actually allow us to use the parameters that are passed in up here when the object is first created. And then self.Fahrenheit is equal to self.Celsius times by, in brackets, 9 divided by 5. And then outside of the brackets, we will add 32. And then we will use self.Fahrenheit and assign it to the round function of self.Fahrenheit and the integer 2, so to 2 decimal places. And then we will just return an F string that has self.Celsius converted to Fahrenheit is self.Fahrenheit degrees. And now we will do the same but from Fahrenheit to Celsius. So self, and this will take in Fahrenheit. Now self.Celsius, which is a variable we will have created, and this will take in self.Fahrenheit minus 32, and then we will times this by 5 divided by 9, and then we will use self.Celsius and we will just assign it to the round function, so self.Celsius to 2 decimal places, and then we will just return an F string again, which will be self.Fahrenheit converted to Celsius is self.Celsius degrees. And now outside of the class, we will create a function called ready. And this will just take in user input to ask them if they want to use the converter. And this will be assigned to a redo variable. So input, are you ready to use the converter? Type quit to end. And then if redo is double equal to the string of quit, we will return false, else we will return true. So now we can actually get on to using the while loop, and in the while loop we'll have the logic that will hold the what temperature the user wants to input, etc. So we will just assign this ready function to a variable. So this will automatically at the very beginning ask the user if they want to use the converter. So if it returns true, then the while loop will start. So while start, we will create a variable called convert, and this will be user input of which conversion would you like to use. And then number 1, we'll create a new line for, so number 1 will be Celsius, and then number 2 will be Fahrenheit. And we will just add a new line in for formatting. So if convert is double equal to 1, I will actually wrap this in an integer call so that we can use it with the the comparison operators for a number rather than having to change this to a string. So if convert is double equal to 1, the number, then Celsius will be created, and this will be assigned to a float variable or to a float call on a user input. So here we will enter input of what temperature would you like to convert. And then here we will use we will create the temperature variable and we will instantiate the temperature class. So temp is equal to temperature, and this will take in two parameters because when we initialize it, we need to have a Celsius and a Fahrenheit. But because we are using the convert method and we are converting from Celsius to Fahrenheit, we don't actually know what the Fahrenheit is yet. So what we can do is just pass in Celsius and then put 0 for Fahrenheit, because at the moment it is 0. But once it has been adjusted here and it has used this conversion method, then it will actually change that, so Fahrenheit will have a different number. So here we can just print temp dot cell to far, and we will pass in Celsius. And then else if convert is double equal to 2, we will create a Fahrenheit variable, which will also be assigned to user input, but this will be wrapped in a float. What temperature would you like to convert? So now we can do exactly the same. So temp is equal to temperature. And here, because Celsius is first and then Fahrenheit, we pass in 0 for Celsius. And then Fahrenheit, the variable we've just created here, will be passed in as the second parameter for the temperature. So 0 and then whatever the user's entered. So print temp.far to cell, and we will pass in Fahrenheit. And then else we will print enter a valid number, and then underneath we will do start is equal to ready again, and this will ask the user whether or not they want to use the converter again, and if they then type in quit, it will end the function or the program. If they type in true, then it will go through this again and it will ask them to choose a converter. So if I save this and then head over to my desktop, my terminal, cd into the desktop, Python 3, temp converter version 3. Are you ready to use the converter? Yes. Which conversion would you like to use? We'll go for Celsius. What temperature would you like to convert? We'll go for 24. So 24 degrees Celsius converted to Fahrenheit is 75.2 degrees. We'll do it backwards just to make sure that it works. So we'll this time choose Fahrenheit. We'll enter 75.2 degrees. 75.2 degrees converted to Celsius is 24.0 degrees. And then just for fun, I'm going to convert something like 1 degree. So 1 degree is 33.8. And then if we do something like Fahrenheit being 10 degrees, we get minus 12 degrees for Celsius. Now, if I type in quit, this will end the function or the program. That's all for today's video. Hopefully this has helped a little with understanding how different programs can be made using lots of different coding methods. If there's anything you'd like me to cover further, please don't hesitate in reaching out to me by dropping a comment below on Instagram or through my website. Stay tuned, as in my next video I will be creating a graphical user interface using the tkinter library. If you liked what we've been through today and you want to learn more, please drop a like and subscribe to my channel to keep up to date. Thank you and see you next time.